All right. Hey, guys, I am super excited because my guest today is Mark Batterson, who is a prolific writer, New York Times bestselling author of over 20-something books. And one of the big ones is A Circle Maker, which you might have heard of. He's got a new book out called Win the Day, which I've begun to dive into, and I'm really excited about. At the beginning of this book, so I read through the introduction and I was kind of hooked. Like, it's just really great. So you mentioned this quote by Thomas Carlyle, this guy from ages ago, and he says this. He says, "Our grand business undoubtedly is not to see what lies dimly at a distance, but to do what lies clearly at hand." And so you go on to explain that Sir William Osler, he had all the success because of that one particular quote and how it impacted him so much. And I like what you said. He said, instead of fixating on things that lie dimly at a distance, concentrate on what lies clearly at hand. Simply put, focus on inputs rather than outcomes. Can you chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, Sir William Osler was the father of modern medicine, gave this speech at Yale University. And I love studying commencement speeches because in about 10 minutes, you get people's sort of philosophy of life.
Yeah.
And here he is talking to these Yale students, and his message is live in day-tight compartments. You've got to bury dead yesterdays. You can't worry too much about unborn tomorrows. No matter what goal you're going after, problem you're trying to solve, habit you're trying to establish, it happens one day at a time. So that really is kind of the heartbeat of the book, Bob, that every day in a sense is the first day and last day of our lives.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like the daytime compartment thing, like that really resonated with me. Just this idea of, because I think so many of us get caught up in our 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals and all these things. And like you mentioned in the book, we also get bogged down by all of our failures in the past that keep us from stepping out. And I love this idea of just operating in a day-tight compartment. So can you expand on that a little bit, explain what you mean by that and what that looks like practically?
Yeah, maybe I have a little bit of fun with it. I don't know why this pops into my mind, even though it is one story I tell in the book. Last year, the Washington Nationals started out the season terrible. And, my office is a few blocks from their stadium. And I think they were in last place. I think they had like a 0.1% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah.
And here they end up winning the World Series. But I love the message that their coach, Dave Martinez, he said to the team at kind of a critical moment, he said, let's go 1-0 today.
Yeah.
And that was the message. And so sometimes, Bob, I think we get these losing streaks, and they can happen emotionally or relational, even financially or spiritually. And we kind of give up on ourselves, or we give up on God. And what we have to do if we're going to flip the script is we've got to go 1-0 today. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And the Lord's Prayer, we wish it said, give us this month our monthly bread, but that's not what it says. It's daily bread.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm trying to think, like, in terms of me, like scheduling out my day each day, or I'm curious how you adjust your scheduling. Like, how has this mentality and this mindset affected how you plan? I mean, because I think there's still value in thinking beyond today, but I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, I love the question. And I'll answer it kind of in a goal-oriented way.
Yeah.
When I was 22, Bob, I felt called to write, but it's not a natural gifting. In fact, I had taken an assessment that showed a low aptitude for writing. In other words, whatever you do, don't write books. And I read 3,000 books before I wrote one. So I kind of, what I did was I started taking proactive steps, but still, I'm staring at 35 and I don't have a book to show for it. And so what I
Mhm.
did is I set a goal that I'm not going to turn 35 without writing a book. And it was a self-published book.
Yep.
But what I did then for 40 days is I disciplined myself to write every single day. Now, is that the best book I've ever written? No. But I proved to myself that I was able to do it. And so,
Yep.
so much of this is reverse engineering. And I would even say this, people who ask me, how do you write a book? My short answer, set your alarm clock very early in the morning, because that's where we get down to
Yep.
business and we
Yep.
really manage time.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Like a good friend of mine, Jeff Goins, who's another writer in town, Nashville. He has written handful of books, and he put a post up on Facebook that just kind of revolutionized my thinking as I'm working on this book now, and as I've been writing. He essentially said, you know, every single morning I get up, I go to the same coffee shop, I sit at the same table, get the same cup of coffee, and I write for, I think it's 500 words every single day. And I've done that, and that's written me 3 or 4 books. That's written me hundreds of blog posts. And I just follow that same pattern, that same habit, doing the work every day. And as soon as he did it, it just clicked for me that I just picked up that habit and just started doing it, because for years, I've been a writer for many years. I would try to batch it, and I would have one day a week where I would go marathon, where I'd write for 6 hours. And inevitably, so many of those days, like, it would just be a bad writing day. And so I would just not get much done and feel like it's not going anywhere. And it just didn't work for me. And there are some people that can work like that. But for me, like what you're talking about, this is a consistent thing of doing the work each day, focusing on that, getting that done. Like, that has made all the progress, and it's been so great for me in this process I'm in now. So I love
Yeah.
that.
And that's encouraging, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you don't have to be a rocket scientist. It literally is about showing up. And so
Yeah.
it's funny, what I do, just to share a little bit behind the scenes, because I'm not naturally gifted as a writer. I have this little routine where I take my shoes off when I'm in a writing season. And to me, it's a reminder that it's holy ground.
That's
and
good.
then and then I don't type with the keyboard. I worship God with 26 letters of the English alphabet. It's kind of this mindset that
Huh.
I take my shoes
I
off. It
like that.
gets me into kind of a flow or a zone. And then when it's all said and done, we even chatted about this idea before the podcast. I
Yeah.
actually recruited a team and said, let's pray that God puts
Yeah.
the right book in the right hands at the right time, so that then a book sold isn't a book sold, it's a prayer answered. And so it
Amen.
really is a
That's really good.
spiritual exercise.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. All right. There's another quote from this book that I really like, just a really powerful idea. And I'd love for you to chat a little bit about this. Time is measured in minutes, and life is measured in moments. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Um, well, and we could add on to that, that the days are long, but the years are short.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
um,
Yep.
I think I live by a little mantra: don't accumulate possessions, accumulate experiences.
Yep.
And there's this, if it's okay, there's this little microcosm of this guy. We don't know his name, but he's called the rich young ruler. And
Yep.
so we know he has a lot of wealth. He has a lot of life in front of him, probably, and he's in a position of power. And he just couldn't quite let go of that possession. Here he is, offered an internship with the Son of God. Think about all of the miracles he could have witnessed. He could have
Yep.
been there when Jesus walked on water. He could have ate uh, the the miraculous catch of fish,
Yeah.
but he traded all of those miracles because he opted for possessions instead.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I think the challenge there is we get so caught up in the minutes. And listen, I advocate for stewarding minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months. Okay, we've got to be. If we don't
Yeah.
control the calendar, it controls us. but there's this Greek word kairos, which is about time and opportunity, and it's perceiving the moment and the gift that those moments are. And all too often in our culture, we're more focused on getting the selfie than really fully experiencing the moment. And
Yeah.
and so that really is kind of the heart of that part of the book.
Yeah, that's really good. And I actually have this little, I want to read this passage because this is kind of what you just mentioned. You said, the only way to be fully alive is to be fully present. And the only way to be fully present is to live in day-tight compartments. For far too many of us, life feels like the meaningless passage of time between far too few meaningful moments. And even when they do come along, we take selfies instead of being fully present. We miss the moment because we're living in the wrong time zone. We're so fixated on the past and so anxious about the future that we miss the present, and then we wonder where life went. And it just hits home. It's so strong. Like, and in
Well,
our Instagram culture, yeah, it's like, yeah,
yeah. It Bob, is there one of those moments for you? I'll give you a second to think about it, but I shared the story about the top of the Empire State Building moment,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
I share about a moment in my life at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Those moments are such gifts from God. I'm just curious.
yeah.
Is there as you were reading it, was there a moment that popped into your mind?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moments. I want more of them. But like, yeah, for me, there's a spot on this trail in Sedona. Like, I went to Sedona for the first time a couple of years ago and went hiking around there. And I'm like, it's just absolutely so beautiful. It looks like heaven. It looks like heaven. And I was with my brother-in-law and my son and his sons, and yeah, it was one of those moments where it's like, I wish I could hang on to this, and that I'll never forget, kind of like what you're talking about. And yeah, I
Yeah.
want more of those. I want to fill my life up with those.
Yeah. Yep. And some of it is a mindset. Um, at the base of the brainstem, there is this reticular activating system that determines what we notice and what goes
Yeah.
unnoticed. And,
Yeah.
it's funny because this is really a rabbit trail, but I've found that keeping a gratitude journal almost sanctifies my reticular activating system
Hmm.
and forces me to look for those little moments every single day. Because
Yeah.
if we don't, at the end of the day, what we remember is rush hour traffic, the person that we work with that maybe wasn't quite as courteous as we had hoped, the insult on social media, and we accumulate all of this stress and anxiety instead of really having a mindset towards, okay, what is the moment today? There's going to be a moment today where I can experience God's presence and really realize how blessed I am.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And and I'm a parent right now with three little kids. And so, there's a lot of really beautiful moments, a lot of really stressful, difficult parenting moments. And
Yes.
it's so easy to let the stressful moments, because, with kids, they can flip a switch. They can be like, whatever, behaving so poorly and then instantly be like so cute and adorable and be the thing that I want to soak this up forever. I know this isn't going to last forever. Um, yeah, and that can really be a challenge, just staying in that moment and not letting it be tainted by what's on both sides of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny since we're on the subject of kids, and my kids are a little bit older. In fact, my youngest son just went to college,
Yeah.
and so we actually went out and got a puppy. And but it's sort of the same experience. Awfully cute,
Yeah.
but pretty sharp puppy teeth. But
Yeah. Yeah.
on that subject, one of my favorite facts is that the word diaper spelled backwards is repaid. So I'll just kind of leave that hanging out there. And the
That's
way the
great.
way I think about it is, we have three kids. It divides our energy by three, but it
Mhm.
multiplies our joy by three.
Yep.
And so it just kind of comes with the territory, such as
Yep.
life.
Yep. That's good. That's good. All right, let's talk a little bit about this. One of the habits you mentioned in the book, and so the title for anybody listening, definitely check out this book, Win the Day. And let me go back to maybe get your subtitle right. 7 Daily Habits to Help You Stress Less and Accomplish More. So definitely check that out. And one of these habits you talked about was this idea of eating the frog, which I believe was Mark Twain or somebody came up with that, right?
Yeah.
And you said, if you want God to do the super, you need to do the natural. And with what we do, Seedtime, like we focus on helping believers, win with money to be the best possible stewards and to honor God with that increase, And so we talk a lot about paying off debt. And Linda and I, we had a challenging debt story, a big pile of debt we had to overcome. And I remember going through that process and looking at this mountain and saying, all right, God, I'm going to step into this. I want to pay this thing off. I believe it's going to be honoring to you to do this. This is going to take, when I do my math, it's going to take a long, long time, but I'm going to step into this and I'm praying for your guidance, your strength to help me do this. And we watched God miraculously sweep in so many different times, so many different ways to speed up that process so much faster. Like we did what we could do in our natural strength and God did the supernatural. And over the years, as I've talked to readers and podcast listeners, I have heard that so many times, that same story over and over and over again. Like I think God just loves helping us pay off debt. So all that to say, talk a little bit about this idea. What can you add to that? Is there anything else here? Are we talking about the same thing?
We are. I mean, the idea of eating the frog is you do the hardest thing at the beginning of the day, and then the hardest thing is behind you. And so it's kind of, well, you can't break the law of sowing and reaping. It'll make or break you. And, but I love that mindset. So we don't forget, we ought to at least talk about that seventh habit, seed the clouds, a little bit.
Let's talk about it. Let's go.
But one other thought as it relates to eat the frog and this idea that if you want God to do the super, you have to do the natural. A couple of years ago, Bob, my wife, in her mid 40s, is diagnosed with cancer. And, it's one of those things that kind of comes out of right field.
Yeah.
And two things were game changers. One, she read this piece of poetry and it asked a question: what have you come to teach me? And it totally flipped her mindset and almost began to see cancer as a teacher. Yeah. And we started doing the hard work. Like we were praying for a miracle. We were believing that she would get to cancer free, and she is now.
Awesome.
But you know what? We had to do the hard work. I mean, we totally changed diet. We started going to comedy clubs more because laughter doeth good like a medicine. We started practicing gratitude as more of a daily discipline. And we eliminated some of the toxins in our environment. So just a word of encouragement to people, like, the title of this book is not Win the Lottery, it's Win the Day. It's not waiting for, something crazy to happen. It's about doing the hard work day in and day out. And when we do that, when we eat the frog, I think we end up experiencing, God ends up doing more than what we would have imagined.
Yeah. So good. All right. Yeah. So let's talk about the other habit you were talking about, sowing the seed or something.
Yeah. Seed the clouds.
Seed the clouds.
Well, I mean, we're cut from the same cloth because listen, I think relationally, physically, spiritually, all of those are areas I've tried to grow in over the years. But I have to say, it's financially that we've had some of the most fun. And we've got to make those decisions that really position us for the way that God wants to bless us. The very first thing God does after creating Adam is to bless him. And so this is God's most ancient instinct. No good thing will God withhold from those who walk uprightly before him. So I have no doubt that God wants to bless us, but we have to, through obedience, really position ourselves for that. And so just as we seed the ground, we also can seed the clouds. And so I have a little bit of fun with that idea that actually meteorologically, about 50 years ago, we discovered you can put some dry ice into the clouds and actually make it rain. And so,
Wow.
and
Crazy.
yeah. And so what do we need to sow today to reap a better tomorrow? Um, and it sounds like that's kind of the heartbeat of your mission and what you're trying to accomplish. Even that seed metaphor.
Yeah. Exactly.
We want things to happen at the speed of light, but biblically, things generally happen at the speed of a seed planted in the ground that has
That's
to
so
take
true.
root and
That
bear
is so
fruit.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the obedience factor, because I think that is so overlooked by so many people. When I look back at my life over the last 15, 20 years, when I would say that I've really been all in serving the Lord. I've watched God do these miraculous things, but it was always the result of a small step of obedience, or sometimes really big step of obedience, but small inkling from God to do it, But it was always something where it's like, there's no way that this will ever amount to anything. Why would God want me to do this? And it just seems like that's a pattern that he's led us down. And without those acts of obedience, like, we wouldn't have seen the resulting fruit,
Yeah.
So I love that you added that in there.
Yeah. Well, and some of the hardest steps of faith are financial steps of faith.
Yeah,
But
for
those
sure.
can be some of the most rewarding. I think it was in my 20s that I read this book about J.C. Penney, the founder of the department store, who by the end of his life was reverse tithing. So
Yeah,
he was
that's so
living off
cool.
of 10%, giving 90%. And
Yeah.
so one of the ways that we've seeded the clouds over the years is that with that first book, we said, hey, why don't we try a double tithe? What if we gave 20 instead of 10?
Yeah.
And then you have a little bit of fun and you get to 50-50, and then you have so much fun. You're like, hey, let's see what God could do if we could even take it a little bit further than that. And so we found almost that it becomes, giving or generosity becomes this adventure where you can be a blessing to others. And then the crazy thing, Bob, this better than me. Like, you can't outgive God. I'm not talking slot machine. I'm not talking like, I'm just saying, God is so generous and so giving and so loving that when we exercise that godly characteristic, it becomes so much fun. And what Jesus said is true. It is more blessed to give than to receive.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So good. Love it. All right. One other thing I wanted to ask about real quick, because this is something that I talk about a decent amount on the podcast. You talked about one of the habits is you're talking about how playing it safe is actually risky. And I know, like, as somebody who worked as an employee in a big corporate job for a long time, that felt, or that I believed to be very safe. And then came to find out that it wasn't when I got laid off. And then I stepped out into kind of entrepreneurship, which a lot of people believe to be risky. But, in a lot of ways is more safe, because it actually is more safe because I was obeying God and what I was doing, But anyway, I'm just curious, talk a little bit about that idea.
Yeah. Well, at the end of our lives, studies have shown that our greatest regrets will be inactions. In other words, it will be the opportunities we left on the table, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, and to the tune of 84 to 16%.
Wow.
And so, I read the parable of the talents, and it's fascinating to me, because here is a guy who breaks even. He buries his talent and then gives back what he had. Listen, in some economies, that's not half bad. You didn't lose anything.
Yeah.
And then Jesus calls them wicked. I'm like, what? What is that about? Well, God wants that 10, 30, 100-fold return. And so if potential is God's gift to us, then what we do with it is our gift back to God. And so
That's good.
sometimes we have this holiness by subtraction mindset. Like if I don't do anything wrong, then it's all right. Well,
Yeah.
goodness is not the absence of badness. You can do nothing wrong and still do nothing right. It's the sins of omission that I think grieve the heart of God, because he gives us all of this potential. And so I think what we need to realize is that faith is spelled risk, that there are going to be moments. Yes, go ahead and count the cost. Luke 14, Jesus said, count the cost.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have got to step out in faith. And for me, I define faith as taking the first step before God reveals the second step.
Yeah.
And often, have you found, Bob, it often faith has a financial dimension to it?
Oh yeah.
That okay, it's going to take about, $85 of faith to fill out the application, or even your first date. That might have been like a $30 step of faith,
Yeah.
And so I think it's just important that we recognize, I love taking little steps of faith and then seeing the way that God honors those, and the way that sometimes those small steps of faith turn into giant leaps.
Yeah, that's so good. All right. So yeah, I don't want to take up any more time. I'm really enjoying the conversation, but the book is called Win the Day: 7 Daily Habits to Help You Stress Less and Accomplish More. And yeah, I've really been enjoying it. If I would have gotten a copy earlier, I would have had it done by now, but it's really good. Like, you're a fantastic writer. And yeah, definitely encourage anyone watching, listening to check it out. Mark, thank you so much for spending some time with me today, brother.
Hey, Bob, great to meet you, and hopefully look forward to another conversation soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mark.
All right.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the video. If you haven't yet taken our money mastery quiz, be sure to do that.
Yeah, it's just a super quick 2-minute quiz, and it's going to help you understand how good you are with your money.
Yeah, and it's going to provide a custom report giving you specific suggestions on how you can reach your financial goals up to 10 times faster. Head over to seedtime.com/quiz to get started now.